Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to r/MaliciousCompliance, where in today's episode, you'll hear how OP deals with a shady owner, who's also a liar and a scumbag, and the story is super satisfying, guys. There's also going to be a few other stories as well, so grab a drink, relax, enjoy them, and do remember to hit that subscribe button, guys, for future tales. So, I work as a train conductor for a company in my country. My job includes making sure that there's no disturbances on the train, as well as keeping a loose eye on everybody having tickets. I'm usually pretty lenient on this if you have a good reason or a funny enough excuse because, hey, sometimes life kicks you in the head and you really have to be somewhere. So, to set the scene, I'm doing ticket rounds in a late evening train. Out of the corner of my eye, I see two teenagers, maybe 15 or 16 years old, switching seats. Now, that's okay. I think nothing more of that. Until a few minutes later, when I come to their compartment to check their tickets and hear their particular excuse. Now, there's 6 teenagers in total. Every single one of them is pretending to be asleep. Okay, people try this every now and then, but this is the first time they try it after making eye contact. So I kinda just chuckle and go, nice try, loud enough for the rest of the compartment to hear. Now at this, they feign ignorance and say that they were trying to catch a bit of sleep. I also noticed that they're carrying an alcohol bottle with them. They're off to a bad start. So then I ask for the tickets, and this is when I hear a myriad of excuses. They say that their friend's mom has them and that nobody has a working phone on them. They then tell me that they went the wrong way first. You get the point by now. So finally, they drop the act and start pleading for a free ride. They even tried to bribe me with 10 euros, to which I replied, next time you try to bribe someone, here's a little heads up. Don't do it in front of a dozen witnesses. Now at this, the other passengers are having a blast so far. Now as a last straw, they bring up the fact that they are indeed underage, and I'm technically in charge of keeping them safe, so I just can't kick them off. Now here's the thing, I have to be really careful now because the law being what it is, I could be held accountable if I drop them off somewhere without supervision and something happens to them. Now here's where the malicious compliance comes in. I finally relent to letting them go as far as the next station where they can still buy tickets with that bit of cash they had, and then continued to do my job. Now, of course, as I have to keep them safe, I'm naturally worried about underage drinking on their part as well, so I arranged for security and police to meet them at the same station. Naturally, once they jump off the train, I can hear, "Ha! I can't believe we managed to BS out of that situation." So I then direct the impressive amount of security and police officers to the teenagers. And let me tell ya, I've never seen anyone with an "oh no" expression as those kids right then and there. Their eyes went wide and they went pale. Their drinks get confiscated and each of them gets shipped home to have a meeting with their parents, police, and possibly even CPS if this is a recurring problem. Fines could also be slapped as well. So the moral of the story is be honest, and under no circumstances tell me to keep you safe because I will keep you safe. You know what, I never ever in my life would have thought the phrase "I'll keep you safe" could be so freaking threatening until I read this story. I love how the kids thought they got away and wiggled their way out of that situation, but ended up coming face to face with police, and that was so sweet. So OP does come into the comments where he tells a good story about the time he helped somebody out. He says, "So one time certainly stands out. There was this dude who looked like he was in trouble, but he came up to me in an honest fashion and told me that he doesn't have a ticket, but he really needs to go to place X. Now this is what I call a good start. Instead of hoping that I won't check or pretending to be asleep, he actually treated me like a rational being to be rationalized with, and I like that. Anyway, he told me he just got out of prison and they failed to give him a ticket. Okay, so then I asked him if he could prove this in any way. And out comes a court order of release along with the text, 8 years for murder, released for exemplary behavior, to be effective today. Well, I'm a man of my word, and the dude got to enjoy his newfound freedom without hassle that day. Hopefully the concept, be nice to be treated nice, was something he took out of that. Okay, so this is primarily a sweet revenge, but it was achieved by maliciously complying. So, a little bit of backstory. I work for a very large roofing company, and in this particular region, there are only 3 companies that are considered when it comes to larger commercial projects, such as apartment complexes, condos, etc. And my company is one of them. Now, we all had worked the region as friendly competitors so much that up to this point, if one of us landed a large deal but didn't have time to complete it, we would hand it off to one of the other 2 in good faith. We would then be paid a finder's fee based on the cost of the total job, and the cycle would continue. That is, until the following incident went down. So, 2 years ago, I got a contract for a commercial metal building, but didn't have the crew to spare for the project. So I called the owner of one of the other two companies, Mr. D, that I previously mentioned could handle this, and referred him the deal, which he graciously accepted. My finder's fee here would have been about $40,000, a pretty hefty chunk of change, but he probably would have made 5 times that in profit. And the guy never paid me this. I tried calling him dozens of times to be paid, but he is now dodging me. Eventually, my number and email were blocked from calling his phone, office, and both work and personal emails. Now, I know for a fact that the guy probably made a little over $200,000 from the job I handed him. Okay, if that's how you want it to be, 2 can play this game. Fast forward a couple of months, and there was a massive storm that damaged a huge condo complex. I'm talking several hundred units. Now, at this particular complex, the HOA board made the decision on what company would be selected to do the work. I knew several members, and they knew of my work, so I was called in to assist with the adjustment from the insurance company to make sure they were taken care of, under the assumption that I would get the contract for the deal. So I met the adjuster on site who knew me and my company very well, as we had been working in the same market for nearly a decade at this point. He and I tag-teamed the adjustment to speed it along, and he also used my knowledge to help him understand what needed to be covered. Now, a little bit about the adjuster is he primarily did flood damage claims, so he wasn't the most knowledgeable about roofing. Thus, he would ask for my expertise quite often when it came to these claims, especially pricing, which comes into play later. We finished the adjustment after 2 full days on site, and the adjuster heads off to go work on the estimate, which he'll have in about a week. At this time, Mr. D from the previously mentioned company finds out about this property, and he tries to wiggle his way into getting the contract. Now, it turns out that he did know the president of the HOA through some mutual friends. Mr. D then bribed the president with a cruise to the Caribbean and a free new roof for his son's home to try to get the deal. Now, the entire board, aside from the president, was backing me at this point and wanted me to do the work, but the dude wasn't having it. I was forwarded an internal email chain from one of the friendly board members where Mr. President flat out replied, "I don't give a damn. I will not let him do our roofs." Now, at this point, the other board members could easily outvote him and just give the job to me. And he knows this, and he tells Mr. D. So what does Mr. D do in his all-infinite wisdom? Well, this turbo nuts decides to buy all the material needed for the project, has it delivered, and has a crew start tearing off the roof without a signed contract. He did this knowing that it would force the board's hand and they would have to use him, solidifying him as the contractor. Now with this, I did lose the deal. But where does my revenge and delicious evil compliance come in, you may ask? Well, remember when I said we were all waiting for the adjuster to write the estimate? We were about to get it. Now, anyone who's ever dealt with an insurance claim knows that the insurance company always underpays the first time around. It's just how it is. You can then deny the acceptance of their price, send in your estimates, and renegotiate. That is, unless you agree to their estimates up front. So the day before Mr. D pulls his stunt, I get an email from the adjuster, who's completely aware of what's transpiring, with the first draft of the estimate. As per usual, he sends it asking me to review it to see if the pricing is right. And oh boy was it not. The project should have cost anywhere between $500,000 and $600,000, and his estimate was for $240,000. Now here's a fun fact. If a capable contractor and the customer agree to an insurance estimate, it makes it nearly impossible to ask for more money down the road, since the customer and the person able to work agreed to the original price. And I think you know where this is going. So I replied back, "Yup, looks good," cut the check and send it to the HOA. So I went to the HOA the following day and gave them the insurance estimate. I told them they just had to call the adjuster and confirm that they also approved it. And they did exactly that. We wished them the best of luck and to give this to Mr. D, as he will need to get that contract finally signed for that price. Now, I didn't put up a fight. I didn't argue or try to get the deal back. I simply went in knowing that I was no longer getting the deal and I would have to accept that. And poof, I disappeared into the wind to let my plan play itself out. So I found out a few months later from my friends that are on the board that Mr. D absolutely lost it when they gave him the agreed upon price. He tried calling the adjuster and getting a new price set, but the adjuster had replied that if he couldn't do it for that price, that I was more than able to. Now the guy knew he was screwed because he had already committed himself to re-roofing that entire complex no matter what. He lost about $100,000 on that project based on my calculations. So on top of that, he tried cutting every corner possible to get his costs down, and he ended up doing an absolutely terrible job. So with that terrible job, the HOA is now suing him for not standing behind his work. As now, numerous leaks have sprung up, and some of the work is so shoddy it can be seen from the street, and he's refusing to pay for it or come back to correct anything. Now, he would have been better off to just do the project properly, to eat the loss, and to walk away tail between his legs. He's not smart enough to come to that conclusion, as I found out. So there you have it. If you try to be stingy and bite my hand that fed you, then come back for seconds, I will bury you. Now, occasionally, I do feel bad knowing his company couldn't even get a contract for a chicken coop at that point. But then I remember that he purposefully went out of his way to try to screw me and destroy any and all mutual respect we had for one another. He made his bed, and now he gets to lie in it. So OP does come back with a few updates, and here they are, guys. Update number 1. Mr. President ended up not getting his promised Caribbean vacation for free, or a free roof. Mr. D reneged on that pretty fast. I also found out later that one of the workers slipped and fell into the attic and went into the ceiling of Mr. President's unit. He was fine, by the way. I got a good chuckle out of that. Update number 2. All the shoddy work that Mr. D did has been fixed at this point, and the property is now in pristine condition, and all the additional expenses the board had to incur had been fully reimbursed. Therefore, everybody ended on top, with the exception of Turbo Nuts and Mr. Bahama Mama Mr. President. My friends, what a wonderful malicious compliance and revenge story. I can't believe he just went and bought all the material for a job that he didn't even sign a contract for yet, to try to wiggle his way in and secure the job. Like, the fact that he was so money hungry and was willing to do that to risk his good reputation, he deserved to have everything that happened. Guys, so here's a comment from the post where someone familiar with this type of situation weighs in. This person says, "Holy crap. I work with HOAs, HOA managers, contractors, and insurance carriers on a regular basis in my career. If the board knew about the bribes, the entire board could be sued by the homeowners and by the insurance carrier for fraud and misrepresentation. That's why you should never work with friends. That board got what they deserved. I would have called the police for trespassing if a contractor started tearing off my roof without a contract, and I would sue the crap out of them." A few years back, I worked retail for a big box store that was mostly general goods, but had a grocery section, and an obsession with the color red. Now, this retail store also has a policy of pulling floor staff up to work the registers when it's busy, and it's a mandatory policy. So at the time of the incident, there was a new front-end manager, who we'll call Lisa, and a new guest experience manager, who we'll call Tom. The precursor to my own malicious compliance incident was a day like any other, when a call came out needing the assistance at the registers. Now, I was reasonably free at that time, and had a second person in the grocery department with me, so I responded. After about 10 minutes, the rush ended, and the regular cashiers had lines under 3. So I turned off my light, so I could go back after my final person in line. So no more than 30 seconds later, my manager comes over and snaps my light back on, saying, "You can leave when the rush is over." To this, I turned my light off again, and having no other people in line said, "The rush is over. There's 3 or less people in all the other lines." So later that day, I get pulled into Tom's office and get told the gem that makes my malicious compliance possible. He says, "You can't leave the register unless Lisa says you can. She's the one who judges when the rush is over, and she'll turn your light off when you can go." Now, this statement is coupled with a disciplinary form which he and I both had to sign that includes the stated policy in the notes. Fine, so cue 2 weeks later in grocery stocking a freezer. There's a call for cashiers. I'm by myself in grocery, so no one else is there. There's a second call, and then a third call specifically asking for me in grocery. So I go over to the walkie-talkie and say I'm by myself. Tom responds that the person from the department will cover grocery, which is fine. So I go up, work the register for about 10 minutes until the rush slows down. I then continue working the register, and then continue working while Lisa goes on break. I continue working the registers while the other dedicated cashiers have no line, and are doing display stocking around the registers. Basically, I stood there until 1.5 hours have gone past, and finally, Lisa comes over and turns my light off and says, with a huge grin on her face, "Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to tell you to go back." So with that, I head back to grocery, and the pallet of now thawed meats, seafood, and dairy is still where I was forced to leave it. I take it back to the damage out location, I log it, and go about the rest of the day. As I'm about to clock out, I get pulled into Tom's office again, this time to discuss how I destroyed company property through negligence. and that there's going to be a meeting with HR the following week to discuss how I would be covering the cost of damages and my potential future employment. So I spend the next couple of days creating a log of events that can be fully supported by the wealth of cameras that are on the front end, in addition to copies of the signed disciplinary form with the policy that I followed, and a written notice of resignation with stated reason for doing so, just in case. So I enter the HR meeting, and Tom says that I'm liable for the lost inventory, and the plan is to garnish my wages to the tune of $2,500. I then place the log of events and the copy of my disciplinary form in front of the HR, saying nothing. She reads both documents, while Tom is still trying to impress upon me that I'm screwed. After a few minutes, HR lady looks at Tom and says, "He was following the policy that you established, that Lisa was negligent in executing. I'll discuss this with the store manager when he gets in," and then she sends me on my way. Nothing gets the store manager in a worse mood than when his earnings are hurt by product loss, and when he actually has to do his job. So OP did do a great job of covering their butt in this situation. I feel like the two managers were just working together to pick on OP, and I wish there was a sweet ending where they both ended up losing their jobs over this, but there isn't, so I'm just gonna have to pretend there is. Okay, so I'll be the first to say that this isn't some life-destroying, pride-obliterating slap of a malicious compliance, but at the same time, it felt like it to me, so I'm sharing. I work as a driver in the beverage industry, mainly targeting bars and convenience stores. Needless to say, after years of doing this, I've run into more examples of Peter Principle than I can count. It seems like every town has one. That one manager who's either too trashy, complains too much, or is too incompetent to rise to the upper echelons of regional management. After 15 years of lording over their sad little gas station kingdom, they've become frustrated, nitpicky, bitter, and downright angry towards their staff and their customers, cause what else are they gonna do? So recently, one of our direct competitors absorbed another smaller local distributor, and as a result, they ended up biting more than they can chew. As a result, the company began hiring anything with a pulse and a commercial driver's license. Coolers started becoming messy as product wasn't condensed and was being put in the wrong spot or just left on the floor entirely. Well, last Tuesday rolls around and it's once again my time to endure this weekly 30 minutes of hell. I roll up to the gas station and truck my 5 carts worth of product. As always, Karen's totally displeased with the order that she'd okayed just yesterday, so I endure the requisite 5 minutes of complaints while she checks the order in. So I'm wheeling the first cart away after the check-in when I hear Karen's shrill voice come crackling through the cooler door. She says, "Clean up your crap. I have inventory tomorrow." Now I've been doing this for years and I take great pride in my work and customer service. I'm super picky about organization and product rotation that I've developed quite the reputation amongst my customers as the one guy you don't have to babysit, and everyone but Karen agrees. I get in and out, my drinks are condensed and organized by product and expiration date, and I cut no corners. Well, on this day, I had a small order that was running a bit ahead of schedule, so after putting all my product away, I spent another 20 minutes or so cleaning and organizing the other guy's mountain of product. By the time I was done, I had amassed a huge stack of broken down cardboard and shrink wrap from all the product that he had haphazardly thrown on the shelf. I was somehow able to cram all of this trash into the one box that myself had brought in and headed out. Now, of course, Karen's there waiting in the back room while she does her reviews for the upcoming inventory, and Karen says, "Geez, took you long enough." I told her, "Yeah, it took a bit of time cleaning and organizing your cooler, but it looks good in there." Karen says, "Well, it better after all the time you spent in there. I've been waiting on you. I still have to do my cooler reviews." So at this point, I tossed the box full of cardboard on the pile by the back door and started to head out. Karen then says, excuse me, company policy says that you have to take your own trash out." Now, I'm not a spiteful guy. I'm quite the opposite, actually. I'm usually quite chipper and polite, but something about her smugness and lack of appreciation finally just made me snap. So I turn around, walk to the trash pile, and grab the box full of cardboard, without breaking eye contact. I then turn it over and vigorously shake all of its contents on the floor. Cardboard and shrink wrap went everywhere. I really had packed it in there, and it took a bit of effort to get it all out. I then said, "This is the only box I brought in, and you should know you scanned it in. The other stuff is your trash that I cleaned up in your cooler. Have a good day." Now, the combined look of rage and smugness on her face as I walked by with my grin was enough to make the rest of my day. So I told my boss about it when I got back, and he got a good chuckle out of it since everybody else hates her as well. And of course, Karen being Karen, she called and complained. But of course my boss only responded with, well, he did do what you told him to do, so nothing I can do about it. Sorry. I love my company. My friends, I love a good story where a boss has his employees back. The Karen did truly sound like a nightmare to deal with, so I can understand why people dislike her. And hey, OP did give her exactly what she asked for. And that, my friends, is r/MaliciousCompliance. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the stories today. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you missed yesterday's episode on the channel, I'll link it right here. A Karen lets her boys destroy OP's workplace, and she ends up losing custody. It's such a wild story, so check it out if you haven't, and I'll see you guys in the next one. I love you.